So, hello everyone, and welcome back to STW Sports. I'm host Samuel Wright, and today I'm joined by fellow Brit Callum Tofts. And Callum, welcome back to the show. It's been a pleasure. Been a while since I had you on, of course, but finally, the 2022 Qatar World Cup has arrived, and we're around about a week into the tournament now. It's been quite an enjoyable one so far. A few upsets involved. England getting off to a great start, but then, of course, yesterday at the time of recording, putting in a very disappointing performance, which we'll get onto later. But yeah, the tournament's been really good so far. A few nil-nils, but generally, I think it's been a really enjoyable tournament. And even though weird time of year, of course, being in the winter, it's just about starting to get used to that now. But the first thing we're going to talk about, though, Callum, is the upsets in the tournament so far. And one that stands out for me, and I'm sure stands out for you and many others as well, was arguably the biggest upset in World Cup history. Not just this World Cup, but the biggest one ever. Argentina losing to Saudi Arabia in their first game, being 1-0 up, having 3 goals disallowed in the first half with offside as well. And then Saudi Arabia scoring 2 early in the second half and holding on for a win. It was an heroic win by Saudi Arabia, and it's got to be said, I can't remember a World Cup upset bigger than this. But what were your thoughts on it, though, Callum? What were your thoughts? Maybe not sure if you saw the game live, but either seeing the result or watching it live, what were your thoughts on an extraordinary event?
I mean, it's what we enjoy about the World Cup. It's the upsets, the teams that you don't really expect to win, and they do. Coming into this World Cup, I think we all thought Argentina were one of the 3 hopes to win it, in my opinion. With Messi probably having his last World Cup as well, and it's such a weird result, but you kind of saw it coming, in my opinion. You look at kind of how they play, and the strikers they've got, and all these attacking threats. Messi, Di Maria, Higuain, formerly Aguero and Higuain as well. They've not really got a solid midfield or a structure anymore, in my opinion. They kind of do rely on Messi, which they did tonight. And, going by tonight's game against Mexico, where they won 2-0, but it wasn't the most exciting game, to be fair, to watch. It was, a 2-0 win for Argentina with 2 shots on target for them, and they've scored them both. They had 5 shots overall. Mexico had 4. It's not the most exciting game ever, but, Argentina got the win. That's what they need to do to bounce back from such a really bad loss, and a lot of worries, I'm sure, with Argentina fans and the Argentina camp and how they started the World Cup with, the loss to Saudi Arabia, like you mentioned. But I think for them, there's no, I'm not going to say passion, but there's no really structure or belief to the game. There kind of is. It's a one-man team in a way. I hate to say, with all these brilliant Argentina players, but does seem like, get the ball to Messi, let's hope he does something, which it happened tonight. But for so long, we've been accustomed to them doing that. And, you don't really remember the last time it wasn't like that. I think for me, it was the 2006 World Cup in Germany, where they had such a good team. Messi was the upcoming star in that team, but they relied on each other so much and not just one player. I think Saudi Arabia kind of knew that in a way and thought, going into the second half, thinking we can get something out of this if, they knew the threats going into the game. I'm sure every team does now as well, how to break Argentina down, and they've done it really well. And for me, I don't think, Argentina came up tonight to prove a point, I think, for me, and they didn't done that, just not as convincingly as some people would have expected or wanted for an Argentina fan, but they got the job done. And, 3 points is a massive thing for them, because if they went into this and drew or lost, it would have been a really worrying time for Argentina fans overall. But for me, I'm not convinced they're going to win it at all now. I was going into the World Cup thinking, okay, they've got potential, to go far in the competition. But for me, I hate to say it to Argentina fans, and, people might disagree with me on this, but I can't see them getting past the quarterfinals at this stage. If they come up against, a Brazil or a Spain or a France or an England, I really can't see them getting past them. Even like a really well-structured team, like Denmark or Switzerland. Again, I can't see them beating them teams, because them teams are so well-structured. Even the USA at this point. We'll get onto the USA-England game in a bit, but USA was so well-structured and have such a good game plan that I think they could easily beat Argentina at this point, which is a really weird thing to say, but I'm not convinced by Argentina at all at this point.
Yeah, I understand what you mean there, Callum. I think you make a lot of good points about Argentina, obviously, and the lack of structure in the team. That's the thing they've been quite criticised for over the years in general, to be honest, with obviously their reliance on Messi goes back to the 2014 World Cup, the last, 3 World Cups, really. They've had a real big reliance. Obviously, Messi is one of the greatest players ever, so when he's in the team, the odds are you will revolve it around him. But it's almost as if they forget they've also got some other very good players in their team sometimes. And when Messi's not performing, the whole team doesn't seem to be performing. And obviously, at the time of recording, they have just beaten Mexico 2-0, but it was a very poor game, as you mentioned, really. And it took a moment of Messi magic to light the game up. And, and I think the Saudi Arabia game was a real wake up call. They obviously hadn't lost a game before that in about 3.5 years. And obviously, they won the Copa America last year as well, I believe it was, beating Brazil in the final 1-0. That finally got Messi his international trophy. But ultimately, though, the World Cups, they've not really done great for. I mean, they got to the final in 2014, but other than that, they've kind of been underachievers for a long time now. And they've got to do, if they're going to go far in this tournament, they've really got to up their game. I certainly agree with you because I know Mexico, of course, in my opinion, this is probably the worst Mexico team at a World Cup for a lot of tournaments gone by. I mean, Mexico are often a team who do make it to the last 16, but, they usually do quite well in the groups. I think this Mexico team, though, doesn't really strike me as one that's going to get out of the group. I don't really think it's the best Mexico team, and they really struggled against that team today as well. So that was obviously a big blow for them, a big blow in a way, but obviously still got the result in the end, so it was all right. And going to move on to the other big upset now, though, Callum, in the tournament so far, Germany versus Japan. It ended Germany 1, Japan 2. Similar sort of way. Germany took the lead in the game with a penalty, and then Japan came back and won the game by 2-1. It's got to be said for Germany, obviously winners in 2014, beating ironically Argentina, who we were just speaking about, but it's Germany knocked out in the group stage in 2018, very surprisingly as well. And of course, beaten in the first game here. They've got to play Spain at the time of recording. That game's tomorrow. And Japan are against a Costa Rica team who've just been lost 7-0 as well. So if Spain beat Germany and Japan beat Costa Rica, they're already out of this World Cup after 2 games. So it's not looking good for Germany, and the likelihood is they are going to go out now, which is a real, real shock again. And I just think Germany are lacking a lot of big characters. I think that back in you used to have Bastian Schweinsteiger, you used to have the likes of obviously Jens Lehmann, Philipp Lahm, big characters who could carry a team, and Klose and Podolski, who always used to do well up front for them. It's just not the same for Germany anymore, unfortunately. And I mean, this is like they could be heading for their second consecutive group stage exit.
No, I fully agree. I think they're going out tomorrow. I really can't see them getting through or performing. I think the main problem is against Japan. They're not scoring. I know they scored 1 goal, but it's a penalty. It's you look at their team and they're trying to play this system with Kai Havertz up front, who I think is a brilliant player, but he's not a centre forward in my opinion. I think he's more of an attacking midfielder, possibly winger, who could break teams down with passing and some aspects of good dribbling here and there, but he's never done it for Chelsea, in my opinion, as a centre forward or really shone because they don't really play his kind of game. I think for him, you need to get balls in the box and hope he gets a header or a touch or a late ball in. Maybe play more of a false 9 formation with him instead of having him as a lone striker and playing a 4-2-3-1 formation, because that then isolates him so close, on his own up front. It's not working. I think when they had, former strikers in the past, like Miroslav Klose, Podolski, Götze, like we've mentioned, he would get so much, they got so many goals because of how that played. And they're trying to just fit Havertz into that position. It's not working. And I think, if you play a 4-3-3 false formation, in my opinion, so with one centre forward, have the likes of Gnabry, Sane, who can pace down that wing and get the balls in the box, it will be a lot better, in my opinion. I think, also you look at this German team, it's getting on a bit as well. You've got Neuersen in there, Müller, Gundogan and Kimmich ain't getting any younger, in my opinion. They're good players for their time, don't get me wrong, but they're also playing in teams with a lot of youth around them. And I think Germany are in that transition period at the moment where they're trying to bring that new generation through with the old players still in, it's just not balancing, in my opinion, because the younger players are not fully developed and the older players are still kind of going downhill in a way, and such, because they're getting older. It's going to happen, but you got likes of Goretzka starting on the bench. In my opinion, he's one of the best midfielders in the world. What he does. I know it's plays at Bayern Munich, but you watch him play, and I think, I know there's a different formations to try and everything. They should have, in my opinion, tried this before the start of the World Cup. I think it's too late now to change your tactics and your kind of whole structure of your team. But they've got Julian Brandt on the bench, a really good attacking midfielder. Leroy Sané on the bench. Adeyemi, or that's how you pronounce his name. He's such a pacey striker. If they want to play one up front, that's probably the way to go. Have three front players. Gnabry, Sané, Adeyemi, they will score you goals. They're proven goal scorers, especially two of them. In the German league and Sané in the Premier League as well. I think Japan knew this as well, and what they done was such a really good tactical. They've done really good tactical substitutions, half of them just put into the second half as well. They broke Germany down after a tiring Germany team who didn't really, change. Germany only brought 4 attacking players, and that was all their strikers. They changed Gundogan, Müller, Musiala, Havertz, and Gnabry around. There's no defensive changes, and surely they should know with pacey, players come on the pitch, they need to change their defensiveness as well. Maybe, bring an extra defender on, or change the formations, maybe 3 at the back, and just kind of keep a bit more compact. There was no plan B for Germany. It was, we're just going to try and outscore them. I know they had so many shots and so many on target, and I think it was 72% possession in the end, but there was no structure to Germany after they went behind. They're going to happen. Teams are going to go behind or draw or get goals here and there, but there was no going forward for Germany. They stayed at the same tempo and pace, and that wasn't enough for me, in my opinion. I think Germany's time as a dominating team isn't there at the moment, but they need to kind of change this transition period now for the next Euros, build on that, and then go again in the next World Cup in 4 years' time, in my opinion. I think they need to kind of write this off as a we tried but it didn't work kind of situation. Maybe they can turn it around against Spain tomorrow. It could happen. And I think they need to get at least a point tomorrow, in my opinion, to stay in the World Cup.
Well, they absolutely do, because I can't really see a world where Japan don't beat Costa Rica after the way Costa Rica played against Spain and the confidence Japan are going to have with their win against Germany. I can't really see Japan not winning. So if Spain do win, Germany will officially be out. Even if it's a draw, it's a long way back with Spain's goal difference as well. Obviously, 7-0 win against Costa Rica is going to do that no harm. So, and obviously, you mentioned then about the Euros, Callum. Germany are actually hosting the Euros in 2024 as well, let's not forget. So that's a real chance for Germany to, obviously, the last Euros were disappointing for them as well, beaten by England in the last 16, which we'll fondly remember. But I just feel like Germany are going through that phase right now where I agree with you. They're not, it's the blend of trying to youth and experience. And I feel like, Thomas Muller, when he first broke through, was amazing. And obviously South Africa in 2010, I believe he got 5 goals at that tournament. He was brilliant in 2014 as well. But the last 2 World Cups, Muller has really looked a shell of his old self, really. And I feel like that's obviously a big problem. There's a lot of players in this Germany team who are maybe still in there, who shouldn't be still in there, maybe, and they're trying to get that blend right of youth experience. And it didn't really, at the last World Cup, the big criticism of Joachim Löw was he kept faith with a lot of players from 2014, and he obviously didn't take Leroy Sané to that tournament, which was a real big shock at the time, considering he's had a great season at Man City at that point. But I agree that I think Germany's haven't really got that balance right at the moment. And obviously, it looks like they are going to be going out in the group at a second consecutive World Cup, which is a huge shock, to be honest. And say Germany have got to rebuild moving forward to get out of what's been a bit of a rut of the last few tournaments, something we're not used to saying about Germany as well. We are going to speak about the host of this tournament, though, now, Qatar. They have become the first ever host to be eliminated first. I mean, to be honest, Callum, I don't know about you. I thought people were really overhyping Qatar a little bit going into this tournament, saying, they could get out of the group at least, and they might go on a surprise run. I was one of the people who never really held up any hope for them. I'm not without being disrespectful to Qatar as a footballing nation. You look through their team on paper and you just don't. I couldn't tell you 1 or 2 players I knew before the tournament began. And as soon as I watched the game against Ecuador last week in the first game, you kind of had an indication that Qatar, it's not going to be a good tournament for them. They are just really here to play the group games and obviously let the fans watch them play at a major tournament. But ultimately, it comes as no surprise that they are the first ever host nation eliminated, to be the first team eliminated from the World Cup.
I mean, it's with all the antics on and off the pitch, and I want to try and stay clear of that because it is a World Cup at the end of the day. It's about football, not political stuff. Because if you get into the more political side, it's gonna kind of ravel a few people and opinions and stuff. But I think for them, it was about hosting it for them. I don't think their fans or players really kind of expected to do well overall. I think kind of you look at Qatar as a football nation and they're not. I think they had to build their team specifically for this World Cup as well, which was quite a shock in general. So I think overall, just kind of I think they just enjoyed hosting the World Cup in general, and then you move on from it. There's not really much to talk about them. I think they're going to enjoy the last World Cup match. I think it's against the Netherlands, which I can't see them winning that either or getting a point out of it. But I think overall, I can't. It's a really tough thing to say, but I can't see them being back in that World Cup unless they host it again. Personally.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think, like you said, they've had a long time preparing for this tournament. I think, obviously, it's been 13 years since they decided they were hosting it. And obviously, looking at the performances, I mean, they were a bit better against Senegal in their defence. They did actually do all right in that game, had a few chances. But, ultimately, of course, as you mentioned, I mean, without hosting the tournament, there's very little chance we'll see them at a World Cup in the future, I think, without hosting it. But obviously, that's enough about Qatar. They're the first team eliminated from the World Cup. The first team to go through this year are France, obviously the current holders. So obviously, France have kind of broken the holders' curse, I guess you can call it. I think the only team to actually qualify for the knockout stage since 1998 is Brazil, who were the current holders in 2006. They got through to the quarterfinals. A really good start for France, really. And Kylian Mbappe looks in top form, which is great news for them. In fairness to France, a few question marks are raised coming into this tournament. I think that's mainly because of how disappointing they were in the Euros last year, getting beat by Switzerland, of course, in the last 16 on penalties. So do you feel like for France, it's more of a case of they're a team now who they do look quite fresh again all of a sudden for some reason, even without Karim Benzema, the current Ballon d'Or winner, who got injured just before the tournament. France just seemed to be getting it right in the first couple of games, even today against Denmark at the time of recording. A narrow 2-1 win, but they were still the better team throughout the game. And in fairness to France, I think looking at the early signs, they seem very encouraging. They could once again go far.
Yeah, I mean, France are France. You look at their players and it's the kind of dream team you'd love, to have. And, the manager must be enjoying himself, having all them superstars and players, with them. And I think with France, though, they've got such, we talked about the balance earlier. They've got a really good balance of old and new now. I think it's what Germany are trying to do, but didn't. I think France have done that. They've got the likes of Benzema, Mbappe, Kante, all the, I could go on, Dembele, Lloris still playing really well, Hernandez, both of them, all Mendy, you've got all these brilliant players in the French team. And it just works as well. I think for them, their firepower and squad depth is incredible. And I think, from like 2006 onwards to 2018, they didn't really do much in the World Cups or Euros before that because they were in a rebuilding process where, they kind of lost a lot of good players and, they're kind of bringing new players in. But now they're back again and I can't see anyone stopping them at this point, really. I think on a personal note, for me, and this is probably going to annoy a few people, I don't personally rate Mbappe. And it's probably a big shock for some people, but there's something about him where he's been overhyped and, really pushed, through us saying, oh, he's the next biggest player in the world and everything like that. For me personally, he's a good player. I wouldn't ever say he's not a bad player and everything for he's scoring goals for fun in France, but you look at on a Mbappe thing, but you look at him playing in PSG. He's got in arguably the easiest league out of the big four nations or four leagues, in my opinion. I think if he came to the Premier League and started developing his game there, he could really turn into something really big. He's got the potential, but there's no ambition or drive there, which I think, separates him from Ronaldo, for example. I think, that's such a big difference between them and two, but that's just me and a personal. No, I'm not, he's playing brilliantly for France and he deserves all the, glory he gets when he's playing for France, but he's got such, blistering pace and he's a really clever footballer. I think just a bit of tweaking here and there, maybe physically a bit more in the Premier League, he could really, he's a future Ballon d'Or winner in my opinion if he continues to develop him. If he kind of stays at a level at the moment like he is in France, it's not really going to work for him. But I think France, in my opinion, at least going to get to the semi-finals this year and, hopefully don't win it because we want England to win it. But, I think, France have set the standard very high this year already.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree. They looked very good in their first two games. I mean, obviously, a win against Australia was convincing, albeit they had an early setback in that game going 1-0 down. But even today against Denmark, they looked really good. I mean, I know they only won the game 2-1 and it was a late goal, but it was a huge win that really for France, obviously getting through to the last 16, and now they can afford, obviously, to relax a little bit going into their final game against Tunisia. Obviously, that's France, though, and we are going to speak about England now, though, Callum. Obviously, we'll speak on the positives first, and the positives was the game against Iran. Going into this tournament, obviously, you look at England-Iran on paper, and you really look at this game, and if England should be an easy England win, but it's not, we've come used to it as England fans. Easy wins don't always happen at major tournaments, barring maybe Panama back in 2018, a 6-1 win. England don't usually do it the easy way. However, this game, though, despite it being a very frustrating start to the game, we actually did win the game convincingly by 6-2. Played really, really well in the game as well. Obviously, Jude Bellingham getting the first goal, which is brilliant. Obviously, he was 14 when the last World Cup was on, so a crazy rise from him so far. And it was a really good performance all round from England. It's got to be said, albeit we did concede 2 goals, a bit disappointing from the defensive side, but it was so refreshing to see England play this free-flowing football, really playing great and getting the win in the end. And it was such a good start to the World Cup for England. So we'll talk about the positives first.
Yeah, I mean, a 6-2 win, you can't argue with that. They got the job done very convincingly. And I think for me, the stand-up player was Saka. Kind of this season so far, he's continued his Arsenal form so well. I don't think it's going to stop, in my opinion, how he's continuing and developing as a player. He's only going to get better. His dribbling is, probably one of the best England players we've ever had, dribbling wise. And over time, he's still only young. He's going to just continue going forward. I think, Bellingham again. I think over time he'll become a better player. I think he's still developing, but he's still a brilliant player and will really kind of continue. The one I think issue I had with the Tunisia game was the defence. Maguire looked like his old self again, which was brilliant for him. And, I'm really proud to him to say that. But conceding 2 against, Iran, I know Wales conceded 2, but they have not got the expectation we've got. And, the penalty, was it a penalty? Maybe, maybe not, who knows? But the first goal, it just seemed like a very static. It was a good finish by Taremi, which, fair play to him. He scored 2 and deserves the goals, but I think as an England stand, we're disappointed. You could see Southgate was disappointed with the 2 goals we conceded after the game, and it's going to be annoying considering it's the goal difference as well. I know we still go through and everything, but it's still not ideal as an England standpoint. And then going into the USA game, we'll talk about that in a second. But overall, first game, I've got no complaints, and the team really seems they've still got that togetherness that we've had from the last 2 major tournaments.
Yeah, I agree, Callum. I think the only disappointment with the Iran game was conceding the 2 goals. Other than that, it was such a good performance. And just to see England playing so well going forward, really free flowing football, and it really clicked in so many areas. And I agree with you on Saka as well. Great to see Saka and Rashford score after what happened in the Euros last year as well. That was a really good moment. Saka's first goal was fantastic as well, of course, a brilliant volley. And obviously, unfortunately, we've spoken about the positives. Now we go on to last night. It wasn't a defeat, which is the negative, but it was such a poor performance. I mean, we after the Iran game, I felt confident. I thought that England are going to have so much confidence. The team, the players are going to be way up for it. It just never clicked last night. And I think credit does have to go to the USA. You know, they did play well. Pulisic hit in the crossbar, a real good chance as well for McKennie, I believe it was. He put the ball over from close range, but if anyone deserved to win this game, it was probably the USA. But a big talking point that I will bring up immediately is, why did Southgate not bring on Phil Foden? I'm sorry, I will stress that point forever. And I know a lot of people have been saying this, but I was saying all of last night to my friend who I watched it with, how can you not bring on a player like Phil Foden when you're drawing a game 0-0? One of the most creative players in the country. It just didn't make sense to me. But just in general, it was a really poor performance from England. And talk about going from a high to a low immediately. Only England can do that. And it's just not a performance that filled us with hope, unfortunately. It was really poor.
Yeah. I mean, where do you start on that? I would say, on a positive, it happened against Scotland last year. Last year, I think it was last year.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
last
it was
year.
last summer. Yeah. I skipped the time. It seems really weird having the World Cup now, so I'm a bit all over the place with it. But
Yeah.
I think you look at it's one of them games you just had to write off. You start fresh against Wales. We win convincingly against them. We've got the hopes back. We go into the round of six. We're pretty much guaranteed to go through, as long as Wales don't score 4 against us and I think it's USA win and we go through. If we don't win, if we get a point or win, we're through. Which the main thing is we didn't lose. I think for me the defence looked quite strong still. I think that was I think Maguire was the best player on the pitch, which I never thought I'd say that again. He's been brilliant so far in the World. My player of the tournament so far for an England shirt, definitely. He seems like his old former self again, and it's such a refreshing thing to see. And I'm really glad for him. Same with Luke Shaw. Players that have been basically pushed out of the United team because of bad performances. They're basically proven they're England's best centre back and left back, which is a hard thing to say considering how many fullbacks we take to a World Cup. I think overall, the game last night, it seemed very. USA came with a plan that they were just going to counter us, and we didn't press high enough. We didn't defend well enough, and defending well to break into them, attacking opportunities. I think for me, when we brought Henderson on, I was like, okay, he's just going for a draw. You could tell that straight away. I think everyone kind of knew it. I think the players knew it as well. We're just going to sit back and go for a draw now. I think what he should have done on a personal, I'm no Gareth Southgate, I'm no manager, but what I would have done is switch the formation up a bit. Maybe take Bellingham off as well, but bring Grealish or Foden on and have just Rice as that central defender and have 3 attacking players on the pitch. You've got, say, for example, you had Kane up front and then you've got Grealish on the left. I would take a Mason Mount off as well. I don't think he had the best game last night either. So I would have put Grealish on the left, Foden through the middle, Saka on the right. You've got 3 really good players going forward there that can put balls in the box and create chances for Kane to score. Kane looked so isolated last night; it was unbelievable. Which was really a big difference from the Iran game, that we've got players into the box to help Kane, and we've got attacking midfielders that can score. I'm not saying Mount can't score, because in my opinion, Mount's a really good player, but he got caught out last night. He just tried to do too much with the ball, and I don't think Sterling or Saka really helped him in that sense. We gave the ball a lot away last night, which wasn't ideal, and then USA just hit us on the counter. That's what they wanted. We played right into their hands last night, and you can tell USA looked the more comfortable playing the game. We looked really disformed and just not with it, which was a really weird thing. I don't know if it was, the expectation or just a bad day. I'm hoping it's going down as a bad day. I'm sure we've seen it before. Southgate will pick the team up again and we'll go, next Tuesday against Wales, but which I can see us winning with such a low expected Wales. So hopefully everything will be fine, but you never know.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Wales game is a big game, obviously. I just think we don't want to lose to Wales. I know we have to lose a lot to get eliminated. I'm well aware of that. We have to lose by 4-0, as you mentioned, to have a chance of getting eliminated. But you don't want to lose to Wales in general for me because the morale for the team will just go lower and lower. I think the good news from an England point of view as well, I'm sure you'll agree, Callum, is that I don't really fear any team in Group A. So from an England point of view, whether it's we play Netherlands, Ecuador, Senegal, I don't really fear any of them teams. If Senegal had Mane, I'd fear them a little bit more. I feel like without Mane, they're not going to be as good. Ecuador are a team who they are a threat. Ecuador. I mean, Enner Valencia obviously has had a great start to the tournament. I think he might well be injured now, though, moving forward. It's a big blow if that's the case. And yes, Netherlands are a team who are a little bit on the rise again. I mean, they've had a few poor years, Netherlands. A big transition's been going on there. But I'm still not that convinced with Netherlands personally. I think they were quite fortunate to beat Senegal. And I also think that they obviously drew with Ecuador and weren't convincing in that game. So if we did go through to the last 16, I probably would fancy us. I think Holland would be a tough game. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't say we'd beat Netherlands, and I wouldn't guarantee it, but I'd fancy us still to win that game if we turned up. But I think the morale, we just need to go far. And I think I do feel quite sorry for Gareth Southgate, to be honest, because I feel that no matter what he does, it always gets so questioned. And if we beat Iran, people say, oh, it's only Iran. If we put in a poor performance, people are soon quick to jump on his back and basically say, and I think that with what Southgate's done at the last two major tournaments, I think people need to be understanding. And if England don't go far in this tournament, I agree. I think it needs to be the end of the line. A new manager needs to have a go. But I still think that despite how poor we were yesterday, this did happen against Scotland, as you rightly point out. We were poor against Scotland, and then we went on to get to the final, and we were about 20 minutes away from winning the Italy game and even a penalty shootout away from winning the Euros. So for me, it can be changed at the end of the day, but we've got to pick it up against Wales. We've got to put in a positive performance, and we've just got to forget this USA game out of our minds. But we'll touch on the the Wales game, sorry, Callum, now. And obviously, I'm going to ask your score prediction going into that game.
It's a tough one because it seems like Wales are out, which is a shame for them. I'd prefer England and Wales to go through, but I think for me, I'm going to say 3-0 England. I can't see Wales scoring. They don't. Bales seems like he's done. Wales, I think Bale's done in general as a footballer, which is a sad thing to say, but I just can't see them going forward anymore or really doing anything special. And where I think England have come up with proving a point a bit against Czech Republic in the last Euros game in the group last year. So I'm going to say 3-0 comfortable win, and we'll go through to the round of 16, top of the group, and see what happens there. But as an England fan, I'm not worried. I've never been one to say Southgate. I'm quite not going to say realistic, but if a manager's done well for you, as a Cambridge fan as well, you stick by your manager over the last 3 or 4 years, who's done so well for you as a coach, took this team to high levels. No other England manager's done what he's done. You can't just, after one bad performance, you can't say get rid of him. He's done something to that group that, is remarkable, in my opinion. We really had no expectation going into the 2018 World Cup. We got to the semis. We got to the final, 2 years later in the Euros. 3 years later. Yeah, 3 years later, sorry. But it's just such a... I don't understand. England fans are the most harshest fans I've ever met in the world, purely because of how they deal with the managers, the players. Any bad performance, that's it for, in my opinion. If say that we lose to France in the quarters, for example, or we lose to anyone in the quarters or the semis, they'll be calling for his head straight away and saying, go, you didn't win. Okay, we're one of the favourites, but there's no clear expectation us to win it. You look at some of the other countries in Brazil, France, Spain at this point. They've got, we can't just expect us to win. We've got to go into these World Cups and Euros expecting, okay, we want to go far in the competition, but not every game we're going to win 4 or 5-0 and play brilliant and, win comfortably. There's going to be games where we're not going to win, but you need to keep going forward. It's how you're going to respond after them losses or draws against, lower teams. And I think, Southgate's got such a positive mindset and, he's willing to push this team further and further every game. And that's what I really like him as a manager.
Yeah, I think that, as you say, England fans will be very quick to jump on Southgate if we don't go far in this tournament. I think that obviously people do question maybe the runs we've had to the final and semi-final have been quite generous, but you can only beat what's in front of you at the end of the day, and that's what England have done at the last 2 major tournaments. I think the Wales game will be difficult, honest, Callum. I'm gonna go with a lesser comfortable win than yourself. I'm gonna go with a 1-0 England win. I don't think it's going to be a 1-0 though where we're hanging on. I do think it'll be comfortable. I do agree with what you say. I think Gareth Bale's days are done. I mean, I know he scored his penalty against the US, but I mean, in that game though, Bale was still pretty poor overall. And I think that against Iran as well, I think that this Wales, I guess for Wales, it's got to be considered a golden generation they've had. I mean, to get to a Euro semi-final and to get to the Euros knockout. But I do think this Wales team has ran its course now, so I do think England will win and Wales will be eliminated early on from the World Cup. So I'm going to try and remain optimistic, though, and I'm going to try and say England will go through. And how far we get in the tournament's yet to be seen. But that does take me to my final question, though, Callum. From what you've seen of the World Cup so far, just generally, or just your general opinion, who are you backing right now to win the 2022 World Cup? If you're saying one team, which team's your money on?
So I betted, not personally bet, but I had a couple of bets with my mates. I reckon Brazil. I said it before they're coming in this World Cup and they've got to prove something. They've got, brilliant youngsters in that team. Anthony, Richarlison seems to have found his scoring boots from somewhere. I don't know where. You still got the likes of Neymar, Casemiro, Thiago Silva, so good, experienced players. Alisson in goal, in my opinion, is the best goalkeeper in the world. You've got so good players in that team and a fan base that are really, really good. And they seem to play so good football. They've got Vinicius Junior as well. I forgot to mention, in my opinion, he's going to be one of the next big players in the world. He already is. It's such a brilliant team. So, and I backed it before the ball was kicked. So hopefully my prediction's right. But from an England point, England as well. I can't see us winning it. I think we'll get to the semis, but I can't see England winning it, the whole thing. So in my opinion, it's going to be Brazil.
Excellent. Well, that's all we've got time for, Callum. We're coming towards the end of the show. Thank you so much for chatting with me this evening. Let's hope it's a good rest of the tournament from an England point of view and just from a general World Cup point of view. But thank you for joining me anyway, Callum. I really appreciate it, and I hope you're enjoying the World Cup back in England. And thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you soon.
No worries. Thank you for having me on again, mate.